In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
Pixie, kobold, elf, and sprite are all on their rounds tonight. In the wan moon's silver ray, thieves their helter-skelter play. Fond of cellar, barn, or stack, true unto the almanac, they present to credulous eyes strange hobgoblin mysteries. Cabbage stump straw wet with dew, apple skins and chestnuts too, and a mirror for some lass show what wonders come to pass. Doors they move and gates they hide, mischiefs that on the moonbeams ride. Are their deeds, and by their spells love records its oracles. Don't we all of long ago by the ruddy fireplace glow, in the kitchen and the hall those queer cough-like pranks recall? Airy shadows where and then, but tonight they come again. Were we once more but 16, precious would be Halloween. Joel Benton in Harper's Weekly, October 31st, 1896.
The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. We're recording here in the deep down in the heart of the Stigmata Studios building, in the steel buckle of the Rust Belt. I am John Towers, and this is the Abracast. So I always try to do something a little bit different, I guess, for Halloween. I've done a couple Halloween shows. Let's see how many. What do we do? Oh, I did the Gosnell episodes for Halloween one year. I did, what else? Oh, the Phantom B-25 that disappeared in the Ohio, or in the Allegheny River one year. Last year, for a Fellowcraft episode, we did a working from the Lesser Key of Solomon. And, so this year we're doing something a little bit more, I guess, normal, I suppose, but don't be fooled. We're doing the Book of Halloween this year by Ruth, Edna, Kelley, 1919. This fits, you'll see, in a few different little ways. It fits into the Witchcraft in America episodes that we've been talking about. And also for the Fellowcraft episode for next month. So it's going to drop. I'm doing it on the 31st. It's going to drop on the 1st of November. It's going to be part of this Halloween thing. We're going to be working magic. We're going to be doing for real magic right out of the sixth book, the sixth book of Moses. I got a whole thing planned. We're doing it on the full moon. On the October full moon, so I'll be recording it on the 31st, and then it'll be posted on Patreon and Subscribestar on the 1st. Yeah, just like always. Okay, so thanks for all the Patreon and Subscribestar supporters. Thank you guys. I really appreciate your support. please feel free to consider supporting the show there on Patreon or Subscribestar. Check out Advertise.com. It's my new-ish website. I had problems a few weeks ago with the old website, so if you haven't been there in a while, check it out. Discord server, I'm still not exactly sure what we're going to wind up doing with it, but it is there if you're a Discord server, if you're a Discord user. The permanent link the permanent invite is in the show notes. And let's not forget tarot cards, t-shirts, and other stuff. And if you want some winter reading, check out the graphic novels and comics section in the storefront of the website. So here we go, the Book of Halloween, Chapter 1, Sun Worship, the Sources of Halloween. We can ask one of the old world pagans whom he revered as his greatest god. He would be sure to name among them the sun gods, calling him Apollo if he were Greek, if an Egyptian, Horus or Osiris, if in Norway, Sol, if in Peru, Bochica, as the sun was the center of the physical universe. So all primitive peoples made it to the hub of which their religion revolved, nearly always believing it a living person to whom they could say prayers and offer sacrifices, who directed their lives and their destinies. It could even snatch men from earthly existence to dwell for a time with him, as it draws water from the lakes and seas. In believing this, they followed an instinct of early peoples, a desire to make persons of the great powers of nature, such as the worlds of growing things, mountains and waters, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and a wish for the gods they had made to take an interest in and be part of their daily lives. The next step was making stories about them to account for what was seen, so arose myths and legends. The sun has always marked out the time, and the rest divided the year into winter, idleness, seed time, growth, and harvest. It has always seen, or has always been, responsible for all the beauty and the goodness of the earth. It is itself splendid to look upon, and it goes away and stays longer and longer, leaving the land in cold and gloom, and returns, bringing the long fair days and a resurrection of spring. A Japanese legend tells how the hidden sun was lured out by an image made out of a copper plate, with saplings radiating from it like sunbeams, and fire kindled, dancing and prayers. And round the earth in North America, the Cherokees believed they brought the sun back upon its northward pass by the same means of rousing its curiosity, so that it would come out to see its counterpart and find out what the fuck was going on. All the more important churches, festivals, their survivals of the old rites to the sun. How many times has the church decanted the new wine of Christianity into the old bottles of heathendom? Yuletide, the pagan Christmas, celebrated the sun's turning north, in the old midsummer holiday is still kept in Ireland and on the continent as St. John's Day, or probably St. John's Day. I don't know. I've talked about this St. John thing in my head on the show before. In the 80s, the Roger Moore James Bond, who is the James Bond I grew up with, I understand that there are superior James Bonds than Roger Moore, but he was my James Bond. And in one of them, View to a Kill, I think, his alias was St. John Smythe, but it was spelled St. John Smythe. But when he pronounced it St. John Smythe. So I've been carrying that around with me since like 1984 or 5, or whenever that movie came out. So whenever I see St. John, I always think, well, maybe it's probably St. John's Day. Okay, St. John's Day, by the lighting of the bonfires and a dance about them from east to west as the sun appears to move, the pagan Halloween. At the end of summer was a time of grief for the decline of the sun's glory, as well as the harvest festival of Thanksgiving to him for having ripened the grain and the fruit as we formerly had husking bees when the ears had been garnered. Now to bees, not the bees! Now keep our own Thanksgiving by eating of our winter stores in praise of God who gives us our increase. Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit, lends us the harvest elements of Halloween. The Celtic day, the summer's end, was the time when spirits, mostly evil, were abroad. The gods whom Christ dethroned joined the ill-omened throng. The church festivals of All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day coming at the same time of the year, the 1st of November, contrived the idea of the return of the dead, in the Teutonic May Eve assemblage of witches brought its hags and their attendant beast to help celebrate the night of October 31st. Chapter 2, the Celts and their religion and festivals. The first reference to Great Britain in European annals of which we know was the statement in the 5th century BC by the Greek historian Herodotus and Phoenician sailors went to the British Isles for tin. They called them the Tin Isles. The people with whom these sailors traded must have been Celts, for they were the first inhabitants of Britain who worked in metal instead of stone. The Druids were priests of the Celts centuries before Christ came. Theirs is a tradition in Ireland that they first arrived there in 270 BC, 700 years before St. Patrick, and the account of them written by Julius Caesar half a century before Jesus Christ speaks mainly of the Celts of Gaul, dividing them into two ruling classes who kept the people almost in a state of slavery. There were knights who waged war and the druids who had charge of worship and sacrifices, and were in addition physicians, historians, teachers, scientists, and judges. Caesar says that the cult originated in Britain and were transferred to Gaul. Gaul and the Britain had one religion and one language, and might even have had one king. So that what Caesar wrote of the Gaelic Druids must have been true of British. The Celts worshipped spirits of the forest and the stream, and feared the powers of evil, as did the Greeks and all other early races. Even much of their primitive beliefs have been kept so that to Scotch, Irish, and Welsh peasantry, brooks, hills, dales, and rocks around the tiny supernatural beings who may work them good or evil, led them astray by flickering lights, or charm them into 7-year servitude unless they are bribed to show favor. The name Druid is derived from the Celtic word druida, meaning sage, or connected to the Greek word for oak, druis, the rapid oak tree. Before him heaven and earth quake, stout doorkeeper against the foe. In every land his name is mine. Taili Sin, the battle of the trees. For the oak was held sacred by them as a symbol of an omnipotent God upon whom they defended for life. Like the mistletoe growing upon it, their ceremonies were held in oak groves. Later, from their name, the word meaning magician was formed. showing that these priests had gained a reputation for being dealers in magic. The druid followed him, and suddenly, as we're told, struck him with a druidic wand, or according to one version, flung at him a tuft of grass over which he had pronounced a druidical incantation. O Curry, ancient Irish. They dealt in symbols, common objects to which was given by the interposition of spirit meaning, to signify certain facts and power to produce certain effects. Since they were tree worshippers, trees and plants were thought to have peculiar powers. Caesar provides them with a galaxy of Roman divinities: Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Minerva, who, of course, are worshipped under their native names. Their chief god was Baal, of whom they believed the sun the visible emblem. They represented him by the lowlier tokens, such as circles and wheels. The trefoil changed into a figure composed of a 3-winged feet radiating from a center. Represented by the swiftness of the sun's journey across two was the symbol of the sun, being the appearance of the light showing upon a dew or stream, making the half-closed eye a little bright crosses. One form of the cross was the swastika. Now remember, this was written before the time of the National Socialist parties in Germany. This was written in 1919. To Baal, they made sacrifices of criminals and prisoners of war, often burning them alive in wicker images. Bees! Not the bees! These bonfires lighted on the hills were meant to urge the god to protect and bless the crops and the herds from the appearance of the victims sacrificed in them. Omens were taken that foretold the future, and the gods and other supernatural powers in answer to prayers were thought to signify their will by omens, and also by the following methods. The ordeal in which the innocent or guilt of a person was shown by the way God permitted him to endure fire or other torture. Exorcisms, the driving out of demons by slaying mysterious words or names over them, becoming skilled in interpreting the will of the gods. The Druids came to be known as prophets. O Deirdre, terrible child, for thee, red star of our ruin, great weeping shall be eerie. Woe, woe, in a breach in Ula. The feet shall trample the mighty, yet stumble on the heads thou lovest. Toad Hunter, the Druid song of Cathavah. They kept their lore for most part in secret, forbidding it to be written. Passing it down by word of mouth, they taught the immortality of the soul, and it passed from one body to another at death. If, as those Druids taught, which kept the British rites, and dwelt the darksome groves and the counselling with sprites, when these our souls by death our bodies do forsake, they instantly again do other bodies take. Drayton, Palobion. They believed that on the last night of the old year, October 31st, the Lord of Death gathered together the souls of all those who had died in the passing year and had been condemned to live in the bodies of animals, to decree what forms they should inhabit the next 12 months. He could be coaxed to give a lighter sentence by gifts and prayers. The badge of the initiated Druid was a glass ball, reportedly to be made in the summer of the spittle of snakes and caught by the priests of the snakes who tossed it into the air. And the potent adder stone gendered for the autumnal moon, when undying twine the foaming snakes, prolific join. Mason, Charactactus. It was real glass blown by the druids themselves. It was supposed to aid the wearer in winning lawsuits and securing the favor of kings. An animal sacred to the druids was a cat. A slender black cat reclining on a chain of old silver, guarded treasure in the old days. For a long time, cats were dreaded by the people because they thought human beings had been changed to that form by evil means. The chief festivals of the Druids fell on 4 days, celebrating the 4 phases of the sun's career. The fires of sacrifice were lighted, especially by or at spring and the midsummer holidays, by exception of November 1st. May Day and November Day were more important. The beginning and the end of the summer, yet neither equinoxes nor solstices. The time was divided, then not knowing or to sow or to reap, but by the older method of reckoning, from when the herds were turned out to pasture in the springs that brought into the fold again, and by the approach of winter, by pastoral rather than agricultural people. The first night before Beltane, Baal, fire. The 1st of May, fires were burned to Baal to celebrate the return of the sun, bringing summer. Before sunrise, the houses were decked with garlands and the gladdened sun when he appeared, a rite which has survived in going Maying. The May Day fires were used for purification. Cattle were signed to be led near the flames and sometimes bled that their blood might be offered as a sacrifice for a prosperous season. When lo, a flame, a wavy flame of ruddy light leaped up from the farmyard fence above. And while his children shout and rang high, the cows of the farmer slowly drove across the blaze. He knew not why. Kick 'em. St. John's Eve. The cake was baked in the fire with one piece blackened with charcoal. Whoever got the black piece was thereby marked for the sacrifice to Baal. Wow, man. That's fucked up. All I got was a rock. What if you didn't want the cake? You're like, man, I'm not a cake guy. I don't want the cake. And they're like, you're going to fucking take the cake. You're going to fucking take... So that as a ship proceeded in the safety after Jonah was cast overboard, the affairs of the group about May Eve fire might prosper when it was purged, of one of whom Baal designated by lot. Later only the symbol of offering was used, the victim being forced to leap thrice over the flames. In history it was a day of the coming of good. Partholon, the discoverer and promoter of Ireland, came thither from the other world to stay 300 years. The gods themselves, the deliverers of Ireland, first arrived there through the air on May Day. June 21st, the day of the summer solstice, the height of the sun's power, was marked by midnight fires of joy and by dancing. These were believed to strengthen the sun's heat. A blazing wheel to represent the sun was rolled downhill. A happy thought, give me this cartwheel. And I have tied it to the ropes and smeared with pitch. And when it's lighted, it will be rolled it down the steepest hillside. Hauptmann's sunken bell. Spirits were believed to be abroad, and torches were carried about the fields to protect them from invasions. Charms were tried on that night with seeds of ferns and hemps, and dreams were believed to be prophetic. Lugh, in old Highland speech, the summer sun. The hour may hither drift when at the last amid the old wearied she, weary of long delight and deathless joys, one you shall love may fade before your eyes. Before your eyes may fade. But as the mist caught in the sunny hollow of Lu's hand, the Lord of the day, sharp, immortal hour, had the father one of the gods, and for the mother and the daughters of a chief of the enemy, hence he possessed some good and some evil tendencies. He may be the Celtic Mercury, for they were like skilled in magic and alchemy, the deception, the successful combats with demons, the bringers of a new strength and cleansing to the nation. He said farewell to power on the first day of August, and his foster mother had died on that day, so then it was he who set the feast day. The occasion was called Young Nasad, the bridal of Lu, and the earth whence he harvest should spring was celebrated by the offerings of the first fruits of harvest and by races and athletic sports. In Meath, Ireland, this continued down to the 19th century with dancing and horse racing in the first week of August.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that, plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
Chapter 3. Samhain. You guys are probably know it better as Samhain, but I believe it's pronounced Samhain. That's what Halloween 3 taught me. On November 1st was Samhain, the summer's end. Take my tidings, stags contend, snows descend, summer's end. On November 1st is Samhain, the summer's end. Take my tidings, stags contend, snows descend, summer's end. A chill wind raging, the sun low keeping, swift to set o'er seas high sweeping. Dull red the fern shapes our shadows, wild geese mourn o'er misty meadows. Keen cold limes each weaker wing, icy times such I sing, take my tidings. Graves' First Winter's Song. Then the flocks were driven in. The men first had leisure after the harvest toil, and fires were built as thanksgiving to Baal for the harvest. The old fire on the altar was quenched before the night of October 31st, and the new one made, as were all sacred fires, by friction. It was called forced fire. A wheel, a spindle were used. A wheel and the sun symbol was turned from east to west sunwise. The sparks were caught in tow, blazed upon the altar. They were passed on to light the hilltop fires. The new fire was given the next morning, the New Year's Day, by the priests to the people to light their hearts, where all fires had been extinguished, and blessed fire was thought to protect the year, though the home it warmed. In Ireland, the altar was Talc Tigga. The altar was Talc Tigga on the hill of the ward of Meath, where sacrifices, especially black sheep, were burnt in the new fire. From the death struggles and look of the creature's omens for the future were taken. The year was over, and the sun's life of a year was done, and the Celts thought that at this time the sun fell victim for 6 months to the power of winter darkness. In Egyptian mythology, one of the sun gods, Osiris, was slain at I found a fucking typo right here. Slain at a banquet by his brother Situo, the god of darkness, on the anniversary of the murder, the first day of winter. No Egyptian would begin any new business for fear of bad luck, since the spirit of evil was then in power. From the idea that the sun suffered from his enemies on the day grew the association Samhain with death. The melancholy days are come, the saddest of the year. The wailing winds, the naked woods, the meadows brown and sere. Heaped in the hollows of the grove, the withered leaves lie dead. They rustle to the editing gust, and to the rabbit's tread. The robin and wren are flown, and from the shrub the jay, and from the woodtop calls the crow, though all the gloomy day. The windflower and the violet, they perished long ago, and the wild rose and orchids died among the summer glow. But on the hill the goldenrod, the aster in the wood, and the yellow sunflower by the brook in the autumn beauty stood. Till fell the frost from the cold clear heavens, as fall in the plague on men, and the brightest of their smile was gone from upland, glade, and glen. Bryant, the death of the flowers. In the same state as those who are dead are those who have never lived, dwelling right in the world, but invisible to most mortals at most times. Seers could see them at any time if they very many were abroad at once others might get a chance to watch them too. There is a world in which we dwell, and yet a world invisible. And do not think that naught can be, save only what the eyes ye see. I tell ye that this very hour, had but your sights a spirit's power, ye would be looking eye to eye at a terrific company. Call the Cox, I guess. It's the guy's name is Coxe, Halloween. These supernatural spirits ruled the dead. They were two classes, the Thutha di Danan, the people of the goddess Danu, the gods of light and life, and the spirits of darkness and evil. The Thathu had their chief seat on the Isle of Man in the middle of the Irish Sea. They brought under their powers the islands about them, and on Midsummer's Day they vanquished the Fir Bolags and gained most of Ireland by the Battle of Moytora. A long time afterwards, perhaps 1000 BC, the four more sea demons, after destroying nearly all their enemies by plagues, exacted from those remaining as a tribute a third part of their corn, a third part of their milk, and a third part of their children. This tax was paid on Samhain, and it was on the weeks before Samhain that the four more landed upon Ireland. And on the eve of Samhain, the gods met them in their second battle of Moytora, and they were driven back into the ocean. As Tigrin Mas, the mythological king of Ireland, was sacrificing the firstlings of every issue and the scion of every clan to Crom Corrich, the king idol, lay prostrate before the image, he and 3/4 of his men mysteriously disappeared. Then came Tigrin Mas, the prince of Tyra, yonder, on Halloween with many hosts. And cause of grief to them was the deed. Dead were the men of Bomba's host with happy strength. Around Tiger and Moss, the destructive man of the north, from the worship of Crom Karach, 'twas no luck for them. For I have learnt, except 1/4 of the keen gales, not man alive lasting the snare, escaped without death in his mouth. Din Senchuich of Mang Select. This was a direct invocation, but the fire rites, which continued so long afterwards, were really only worshipping the sun by proxy, and his nearest likeness, the fire. Let's skip ahead a little bit. The coming of Christianity, All Saints and All Souls. The great power which the Druids exercised over their people interfered with Roman rule of Britain. Converts were being made at Rome. Augustus forbade Romans to become initiated. Tiberius banished the priestly clan and their adherents from Gaul, and Claudius utterly stamped out the belief there to put to death the Roman knight for wearing the serpent's egg badge to win a lawsuit. Forbidden to practice their rites in Britain, the Druids fled to the Isle of Mona near the coast of Wales. The Romans pursued them, and in 61 AD they were slaughtered in their oak groves, cut down. During the next 3 centuries, the cult was stifled to death and the Christian religion substituted. So longtime listeners of the show might be familiar with this, because we talked about this in our Boudica episode. Way back at the beginning, dudes. Like at the very beginning, we talked about it. How they went to the oak groves and they killed all the druids. It was believed that Christ's advent to the pagan gods either died or were banished. More poetry. The lonely mountain Zoar, and the residing shore, a voice of weeping heard and loud lament from haunted spring and dale, edged with a poplar pale, imparting genius with sighing scent, the flower interwoven tresses torn, the nymphs in twilight's shade of tangled thickets mourn. Milton on the morning of Christ's nativity. The Christian fathers explained all oracles and omens by saying that there was something in them, but they were the work of the evil one. The evil one, the miraculous power they seemed to possess, worked black magic. It was a long, hard effort to make man see that their gods had all the time been wrong, and harder still to root out the age-long growth of rite and symbol. But on the old religion might be grafted new names. Midsummer was dedicated to the birth of Sinjin. Lungasad became Lammas. The fire belonging to these times of years retained their old significance, forgotten or reconcentrated. The rowan, the mountain ash, whose berries had been foods of how did I pronounce it? Thaltua? Now exorcised the very beings. The trefoil signified the Trinity, and the cross no longer the rays of the suns on the water. Can I get an amen? But the cross of Calvary. The fires which had been built to appropriate the god and consume his sacrifices to induce him to protect them were now lighted to protect the people from the same god, declared to be an evil mischief maker. In the times of autumn and festivals of the Druids became a vigil of All Hallows or All Saints' Day. All Saints was first suggested in the 4th century, when Christians were no longer persecuted, in memory of all the saints, since there were too many for each to have a special day. A special day on the church calendar. The day in May was chosen by Pope Boniface IV in 610 for consecrating the Pantheon, the old Roman temple of all the gods, to the Virgin and all the saints and all the martyrs. Pope Gregory III dedicated a chapel in St. Peter's to the same, into that day was made compulsory. In 835 by Pope Gregory IV as All Saints' Day. The day was changed from May to November so that the crowds that thronged to Rome for services might be fed from the harvest bounty. It must be nice just to be able to move this shit around. It is celebrated with a special service in the Greek and the Roman churches and by the Episcopalians. The 10th century Saint... Oh boy. In the 10th century, Saint Odilo, the Bishop of Cluny perhaps, instituted a day of prayer and special masses for the souls of the dead. He had been told that a hermit dwelling near a cave heard the voices and howling of devils, which complained strongly because the souls of them that were dead were taken away from their hands by alms and by prayers. De Voragine, the Golden Legend. This day became All Souls' Day and was set for November 2nd. It is very appropriate that the Celtic festival, when the spirits of the dead and the supernatural powers had carnivaled over triumph over the God of light, should be followed by All Saints and All Souls. The church holy days were celebrated by bonfires to light souls through purgatory to paradise, as they had lit the sun to his death on Samhain. On both occasions, they were prayers. The pagans petitioned the Lord of Death for the peasants' dwelling place for the souls of the departed friends, the Christians for their speedy deliverance from torture. They have in common the celebrating of death to one of the sun, the other of mortals of harvest, the one of crops, the other of sacred memories. And they are kept by revelry and joy, first to cheer men and to make them forget the malaligned influences abroad, and second, because the saints in heaven rejoice over the repentant sinner. We should rejoice over those who, after struggles and sufferings past, have entered into everlasting glory. Here's some poetry to wrap this fucking thing up. My mother country, yet were the fields in bud, and the harvest, when it shall rise again up through the fire and flood. Mother, my mother country, was it not all to save the harvest and the bread and the harvest of men, the brightest years wave on wave? Search not my way worn, search neither weald nor wave. When is there heavy reaping time to the earth? That is one wild grave. Marks All Souls Eve. I'm John. This has been the Advertise.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Advertise and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Advertise. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Advertise. the price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I am proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you could sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.